and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Now, ngifuna ukuzibeka lezi zinto because I think it's important. UJesu abafundi mababuza uJesu ukuthi sowazi kanjani ukuthi lezi zinto sezisondele noma ukubuya kwakho sekusondele. And Jesus began to lay almost the foundation or foundational signs of his coming. Interesting ukuthi when we talk famines namhlanje, no one thinks of it as a sign of the time, or no one thinks of it njenge sign of the end of time. And we've almost become so ignorant about the things that are taking place around us. Sesikhohlwe ukuthi madoda ngenzeka these things are pointing to the coming of Jesus Christ. So we talk about pestilences, and because things like pestilences, they affect a lot of us. Like today, we're talking COVID-19. It's something that affects wonke umuntu, and people are dying, and everyone's scared because they're seeing people dying. But within that also is a sign of his coming. Earthquakes. I mean, quite recently, we'll talk about some of those things. Earthquakes, as soon as you hear an earthquake, it's not only a geographical occurrence. Earthquakes should awaken us. Earthquakes should invoke something in us as a reminder. When we see these earthquakes in diverse places, it must remind us, you know, when you're caught up in your own life, living your life and sinning and doing whatsoever, and when you strike these things on the TV, be reminded with them fit, yeah, I may be doing what I'm doing, but really something is coming or something is about to knock. And really, all these are just a reminder that something really is coming and Jesus is about to return. So as a first start, Jesus spoke about many things, and we're not only simply targeting COVID-19, but zonke lezi zinto that are taking place in the world today tell us what is pila esikhathini sokugcina. We're living in the very end of time. Okay. We're going to start basically on understanding how these natural events have been taking place, and just to sort of get an understanding of what are we looking at. And the urgency is much higher than it was before. There's an organization, a non-profit, which specializes on producing stats around natural disasters. It's called the Bergen Project. They compare the number of natural disasters from around the 1970s up until now. So when you look at the stats, manager, which I'm just showing you on the screen, in 1970 there was about 78 natural disasters, and then during the 1990s, and on average a year you would get around 354 of natural disasters. Between 2000 and 2004, that rose and significantly jumped to around 728 natural disasters. As you can see, the severity and the rise of these things are continually rising and rising and rising. A natural occurrence will become an everyday thing. And to be honest with you, we are even feeling some of these things. I mean, there are people, I've felt a tremor some months ago. And I've heard reports in South Africa, elsewhere, where people have actually underwent or experienced tremors or mini earthquakes, to put it like that. In the news not too far ago, Besnama tornado in Mpumalanga, tornadoes in KZN, and some even in Bloemfontein and so on. So these things are not as far from us as we think they are, but they are quite naturally close. But what we are stressing primarily on this slide is that we need to understand with Amma that the frequency of these things is rising. The number of them is rising year by year. As just kumbuz of it with Emma, that it's not that far. So the more frequently they happen, it simply tells you something is really about to strike. So let's be aware of what is taking place around us. Wildfires. I mean, I can't overstress what is taking place in Mauritius. If you look at Australia, there was a research published, edition again, natural climate change, focusing on bushfires, or say Australia. They estimate that over 21% of the total area covered by Australian forests, including Tasmania, has been burned so far between late 2019 and the year 2020. We're talking natural fires, from nowhere. And that's what we are seeing taking place all around us. So Australian people, it's not the only thing that took place, by the way, Australia. I know there was a particular day, Bavugabantu, and everything just became red. The sky was red and people could not understand what is taking place. Later on, scientists began to understand that it was the dust that was hurled from one of the deserts, which were very close. So in Tlabate corner, the dust corner was quite red, so it almost covered everything around it. So again, natural disasters. We are talking about things that happen on a day-to-day basis. In your own location, but when they happen in diverse places, again, it's a sign, it's a wake-up call to everyone to be aware of what is taking place. Okay. Again, nation shall rise against nation. Now we look at earthquakes, and just to point to you how this thing about earthquakes is really grown up. I was looking at the stats this morning. In the past 24 hours alone, the world has experienced over 139 earthquakes. That's looking at any earthquake above above the magnitude of 2. Yes. So over 139 earthquakes have struck, anything beyond 2.9 magnitude earthquake within the last 24 hours. These things are happening so frequently, we're not even aware what is just affected. But every day we're experiencing these things, and they are a sign. They are a sign. Jesus said they are a sign of his coming. For instance, and really in these things is God sending a message to all of us to say, hey, wake up, and particularly to his church, because more than anything else, we are the most asleep people in the world, and we should be sounding the call. So earthquakes really are a sign of his coming. And then we come to, obviously, the thing that is making all of us become weary and troubled in Madoda Kwenzakalan. So this COVID-19 coronavirus, what does it mean? What does it mean in our world? Just to paint a picture of where we live in now, uh, this is the life in Italy.
Yep. Yo, no, man,
So essentially, this is what is taking place all across the world. and Italy is more severely struck than all the other countries. So Italy, Spain. In fact, now Masasbuga stats, America's got more cases than the likes of Italy and so on. So hey, this is the life we're living today, and it affects the whole world. And to be honest with you, and it's concerning, right? So Onkumuntu is worried and so on, but we are reminded through scripture that we should not fear. Instead, we should trust in the Lord. Nanoma izimo zinjani now. So that's the nature of the life that we live. So this is Johannesburg, an earlier video of a news anchor, Ezlulinda Nesasantin. As you can see, it's quite empty. Kudlula nje imoto eyi-one. Everyone is respecting the rules around isolation. As you can see, a place that was very busy for a long time is now empty. I know there are places in other parts of South Africa thina kakhulu abantu who don't want to adhere to some of the rules and the lockdowns, but it's very interesting to know Tuguti, something like this can have a global uniform type of reaction towards something of the nature of coronavirus. So just think about it for a moment. I will if the whole world can come together, world leaders, and decide, okay, everyone needs to be put on lockdown, or countries need to make a ruling around locking themselves in because of a virus like this, it simply tells you, it could be very easy in the near future when we start talking about the mark of the beast and everything else to have a really global command around locking people in. Never mind that if people don't conform to something, you could be locked into a prison or rubula or whatever the case may be. It's quite severe. I mean, my video where police officers or soldiers are not as kind, like and the violence, the nature of the violence around enforcement is much higher than what we're seeing in this country. Simply tells you, and when nations come together and agree on something, many things can be done. Just a reminder to everyone, you can always cut in and ask a question if you want to ask a question, particularly around something that we're talking about. So this coronavirus thing is really quite a big thing. Yeah, it's affecting everyone. No country is immune to this whole thing. Again, going back to Matthew 24, speaking about these things, they shall transpire. And obviously this Lentes Kulumangayo has also introduced some very interesting things. Has exposed some very interesting things. Today, you hear prophets telling you interesting stories about coronavirus. TB Joshua, for instance, Pume some time ago, and he told people that coronavirus will disappear in 27th of March. We're sitting at 28th of March, and that virus has not disappeared. In fact, they haven't given him Moya Shem. Unfortunately, he's suffering on Twitter. People are coming in and really criticizing him for making false predictions. Again, Uchesu also prophesied around these things or said these things that will happen in Iskatukin. There'll be false prophets, false prophecies. And one thing we need to guard against is they create this unnecessary tension, which gives rise, obviously, to false claims and false prophecies as Dugisabaning. So I hear people talking of many things. Okay, now it's time for us to move to the cities. Okay, now it's time for us to and that agitation is really not directed in the right path. And so we really need to be careful. Instead, they should drive us back to reading God's word and to find out what's God's plan about us for this time. Okay. So what of the Vatican? So what has the papacy said on this issue? So the Pope came out on the 28th, which is pretty much this morning. Now it's church versus corona as Pope Francis joins the fight of donating respiration. By the way, he was also very sick, so he recovered quite quickly. They claim it was flu, and they tested him, and he tested negative. From what they tell us, but obviously he also had to run a mass with no audience and so on, just to show you the severity of this thing. But interesting is a post that came out on the 25th of March, where he begins to call on Christians worldwide to combat coronavirus pandemic with midday prayer. Again, let's just read it quickly. Pope Francis has called on the leaders of all Christian churches, very important to note, all Christian churches, communities, and confessions worldwide, as well as Christians everywhere, to join together in praying the Our Father on March 25, and to implore God to rid the world of coronavirus pandemic that is wreaking havoc everywhere. He also said that he would lead a prayer service from the front of St. Peter's Basilica on March 27, and afterwards would offer a blessing Uba et Orbi to the city of Rome and the world, which with the Blessed Sacrament. It's a good initiative, to be honest, to have the whole world praying, but we should know that anything that involves this man, obviously in the future, will go towards a different direction, and he's quite intelligent around how he does things. To just to emphasize that is that if he's able to call the whole world into doing something, especially in the moment of crisis. In fact, we're discussing this thing about around leadership, particularly when crisis forms, is that any leader who fails to act whenever there's a crisis, can sway the masses against you. So how you act as a leader determines how people follow you. And he's been very good around a crisis and things like that. He's come out and really speaking to the whole world and masses following behind him. In Kumbuzo Revelation 13, and it says the whole world wondered after the beast. So again, he's able to struck an instruction and the whole world follows because he's Uban, which is the Holy Father, and everyone has a way of respecting what he says. Again, calling all world leaders, world churches all across the world to get involved in this thing. So we ask a question. So in the background of all these things, of all this thing is Kulumangayo. So what time is it? What time really is it? Siphila kwesiphi isikhathi? Let's start by reading a text. 1 Thessalonians 5 verses 4 and 6. Just to get a context of what is Peter kwesiphi isikhathi. Again, if you've just come in, we just ask that you mute yourself so that we don't disturb the audio. Okay, great. 1 Thessalonians 5 verses 4 to 6. Uti, but ye, brethren, are not in darkness, that day should overtake you as a thief. Amagama, ninenkholwayo angathi ukuza kwaNkulunkulu kunifikele njengobusuku, njengesele ebusuku. Yeah, I mean, there's overwhelming evidence pointing to the day of the Lord. So everyone who calls himself a believer should be aware ukuthi lezi zinto njengoba zenzeka nje zikhomba ukubuya kwenkosi. So it mustn't catch us by surprise. We should not necessarily be surprised when we see these things happen. Uti verse 5, ye are all the children of light and the children of the day. We are not of the night nor of the darkness. Therefore, very important, let us not sleep as do others, but let us watch and be sober. Yes. So I hear a lot of these things. You hear my Christ but it's just a sickness. It's just this it will pass and we'll move over to something else. Let me tell you something very interesting. The book of James tells us something interesting. None of us have a guarantee of tomorrow. Yes, our lives are like a drop of vapor that appeareth for a moment and then vanisheth away. We ought to say, if the Lord wills, we will do such and such a thing tomorrow. Meaning, this must be a reminder, the time in which we live is a very interesting time, and many things can transpire within that time. Okay, I'm just muting some people here. So very crucial, very, very crucial that we understand the time in which we live. So God's call to everyone who's living in this time. Number one, you are not children of darkness so that you may be surprised. By the way, there's a picture I wanted to post here. I don't know how many of you have been to the mall or the bookshops. I was looking at the shelves yesterday. Not a single Bible was left on the shelf. Not a single Bible was left on the shelf. These signs or these videos I've been playing you, the one thing that is common throughout is that everyone seems to calling back uNkulunkulu. Everyone calls upon uNkulunkulu in their distress. So it seems to be driving people to a common denominator where people are like, uNkulunkulu, what are you saying to us? Lord, what are you saying? Is it the day or is it the end of the age? What seems to be happening? Yes, I see a hand there. Okay. It's not saying anything, but then again, yes, and it's the time in which you live, and so you are not the children of light. You are the children of light, so you should be an example unto a dark world. So we should basically, obviously, no cause for distress. We are not living in the time of trouble now, so you don't need to be sounding alarms like that. But we should be talking about what will be taking place very soon, or sounding the trumpet. Now, let's be aware that Jesus is still coming, and these are signs and wonders of his soon coming. So, and number three, very important, let's not sleep as others do. And it's very easy these days to become lax and drowsy for a simple reason. We've become quite used to these things, and a lot of us are not sober, a lot of us are not watching. We've just fallen asleep like the 10 virgins. Okay, again, selected messages, book 2, page 52. Ellen White says something very interesting. She says, Satan, now pay careful attention to this quotation. I think it was very important, very striking when I read it. What is Satan is working in the atmosphere. Satan is working in the atmosphere, or in the air. He is poisoning the atmosphere. I hope we are clear. He is poisoning the atmosphere. Satan is working in the atmosphere. Maybe let me put it this way. I have come to bring life and life abundantly. He is umbulali from the beginning. So we understand who brings death. God does not bring death. Instead, the devil brings death. Although God allows it, but it is the devil that brings death. So again, he has something very contextual. In the last days, what we will be seeing is that Satan is working in the atmosphere. He's poisoning the atmosphere. Okay, yeah. Satan is poisoning the air, and here we are dependent upon God for our lives, our present and eternal lives. And being in the poison position that we are, we need to be wide awake, wholly devoted, wholly converted, wholly concentrated to God. But we seem to sit as though we were paralyzed. We seem to sit as though we were paralyzed. God of heaven, wake us up. This is what she says when she's looking down the ages at Bega, what is about to take place later on in the near future. So Satan poisoning the air, very important quotation. Then she continues to say in manuscript releases, 19, page 382, what if famines and will increase? Pestilences will sweep away thousands, and we are seeing that happen. We're sitting way above what we thought this sickness will destroy in terms of killing abantu. I just don't see who's present now because they have not muted their. We are hearing. So if you've come in, please mute your yeah. Okay. So again, pestilences will sweep away thousands. Dangers are all around us from the powers without and satanic workings within. The restraining power of God is now being exercised. So in other words, the 4 angels in the 4 corners of the earth are letting loose, and we're seeing things happening in the world. Again, telling us, hey, this man who's sitting in the most holy place will finish his work. And once he does that, then certain things, more things will transpire.
How do you mute this now?
Okay, in the bottom left hand corner, you'll see a mic. Just click on it and you should be able to mute. Okay, that's fine. So these things will happen, and then really, God is letting loose, and we're going to see some strange things happening in the near future. She then goes on to say in Testimonies, volume 9, page 11, the calamities by land and sea, the unsettled state of society, the alarms of war are portentous. The forecast approaching events of great magnitude. The agencies of evil are combining their forces and consolidating. They are strengthening for the last great crisis. And I think it is here I want to pause and really go back to Isemon Gamoila, Mfundisi Moila earlier on, when he was really talking about this issue, particularly in the sense that we should not be stressing, but we should know in the time that we're living, and instead get hope from Nkulunkulu. So calamities, war, and magnitudes, yes, I'm getting, they are strengthening for the last great crisis. Great changes, this is the part that makes me worry. With the great changes are soon to take place in our world, Mamela, the very last line, and the final movements will be rapid ones. I think from way before, around from 1844 up until now, we've really seen it's almost a lag in terms of movements. But she really points out that going forward, these things will become quite rapid. So things will happen quite quickly. And she says, in a great deal, it will surprise many how these things will be happening quite quickly. And whilst that is the context, the other context obviously is the fact that Ibandla in itself has become quite lax in itself today, which don't seem to describe the true Christian way in which we've done for some time ago. There's infighting and there's all these things, and there's prosperity gospels now being preached and all sorts of things happening in the church. All these are basically signs that something is about to take place, and Nkulunkulu is obviously wanting to finish the work. And for that to happen, we also are going to see these things. So maybe that gives rise to one of the first questions is what does this mean for the church? What does this mean? What does it mean for the church? It's really a wake-up call, to be honest with you. And one of the things I'm seeing globally that is going to take place is the fact that with this thing happening, it's actually moving everyone post Lente Yenzakalayo manje. What we're going to be seeing is that I'm seeing almost the whole world becoming quite spiritual, and to be honest with you, there's a reason why it's common sense. If every one of us is going through distress and a great crisis, or people need to fall back on something, there needs to be some hope where people can fall back on. And quite frankly, the only source of hope many people have in this world is their faith. And so this thing is almost like an injection, which it kickstarts something that was dead for a long time, and it's about to revive the whole world towards a faith realization. And we all know when you study prophecy, once that energizing happens, then obviously, because people are caught up in the crisis, strange decisions will be made to move people to a more faith-based way of running even their countries. And we'll start seeing an amalgamation years, church and state, simply because people are now agitated and they're worried because of the time Abapilogs on. So this is what we're going to see. And literally, these will become rapid events that will take place in the future. Okay, now it's time to go through some of the questions related to a study. Question number one. Babu Mjoli, is this what we are talking about? What's happening, particularly around COVID-19? Is it the plagues? Have the plagues started? Ingabe sekuqalile lento zokuwa kwama-plagues, or the 7 last plagues? You remember during the time of Moses, there were 10 plagues. During the end of time, according to the book of Revelation, there will only be 7. And to be honest with you, this is not so a clear answer. This is not the last plagues as yet. These are not the last plagues, 10 last plagues, 7, the last plagues as yet, because there's no plague that speaks to a coronavirus. So we are not at that point as yet. And then the plagues, plagues only happens immediately after probation closes. So when probation closes, Umusoya Vala, and Unkulunkulu then shows his anger through the last plagues. Okay, so that's to answer the question around, is it really the plagues as yet? So it's not really the plagues. Next question. Is it the little time of trouble? Are we seeing what we call the little time of trouble? And an answer to that would be, we don't know, to be honest. It could be leading us to the little time of trouble. That's not the time of trouble after probation closes. There's a little time of trouble that happens just before Umusovala, which involves the preaching of God's word and almost a mini persecution of Abazalwane who are faithful to God and things like that. So is this the little time of trouble? Are we going to see it in the future? So an honest answer will be, we don't know. We don't know how this is going to lead up to that. One thing I am seeing, though, is that it's going to start exposing a lot of us who are preaching the end time message, and eventually give rise to people not wanting to hear the message because they're comfortable in their own state of being. So in the near future. So to be honest with you, we don't know, but it looks as if it might just lead us there. We have no knowledge as yet. So the other time of trouble, just to be clear, so there's the mini one, then there's the big one, which happens after probation closes. And when that happens, niyazi ukuthi Jesu Matthew 24, when you see the Roman armies encamp around Jerusalem, so you flee to the mountains. So we're not calling anyone to start going. Maybe that leads to our next question around should we move out of the cities? Not as yet, because Jesus did really say, if you can and you have means, you have no problem and everything is working for you, there's not a problem. However, we should not be agitating any of our members to do anything now. We have not done our work. So there are cities that do not know the truth. We have not done our part, to be honest with you. We've been sleeping for a long time. So it's not time to really move out of the cities yet. Because his instruction was, if you see the Roman armies encamp around, then you know it's time for you to move. So in other words, for our time, once we start seeing Sunday laws and things being enacted, then we'll know that it's time to really start moving out of the cities and really establishing ourselves outside of the points where we might be found and killed and other things like that. Okay. What will happen next? What will happen next? It's a very broad question. I think I will go back to what Ellen White said around rapid movements in the near future. So what I'm really seeing will take place around this is obviously a wake-up call. Satan is uyalola, from what I'm seeing. Satan uyalola is actually preparing to finish his attack on God's church and the world in its entirety. So we are seeing a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. And how am I with God when these things are happening? So in terms of what will happen next, there are a number of things which we're seeing. God is about to revive his church. He really wants to revive his church. And this is one of the means, right? Throughout these disasters and natural events, we must see God's intent for his church. And his intent really is for his church to wake up. So we'll be seeing a lot of things, including a ripening of the process of sifting in the church, particularly because God wants to finish his work. So there'll be some agitations even in our very own churches because God is about to sharpen his movement to finish the last. So there'll be the outpouring of the Holy Ghost. We'll see the swelling of the third angel's message in Zobon and this is going to increase over time. And we see that pretty much happening amongst evangelists. We all pretty much agree as to what really is going to be taking place not too far from now. So yeah, God is about to really create a wake-up call. So that's one of the things we see next. And eventually that leads the whole world becoming annoyed with us. What we also are going to be seeing is a lot of talk around climate change as an example. So climate change and people penning down all the events around climate change. But we all know, according to the book Ipaipili and the books of Isaiah, the world in itself is it's just tired. It's about to give up. The world in itself is dying. The earth is dying because of sin. So that's what we are seeing. So there's nothing we can do. There's no amount of money we can pay to restrict the world from dying. So the earth, as we know it, will soon become none and void. Okay. So next question, what should we do? Looking at the time in which we live now and going into the future, what really should we be doing now? Really, I've put together a number of things that we can be doing. Number one, we should stop panicking. I know it's not easy to say that, especially when we start seeing these things happen all around us. But really, to be honest with you, and we read a text, it was 1 Thessalonians 30, we are not the children of darkness, so this day should not come to us as a thief in the night. So we do not need to panic. Instead, we should know what said they will happen, and they are actually happening. Some of those things are happening now. Number two, we should be of good cheer, especially with COVID-19. Ungatholakala endlini sozibumbile lapha sokorokobele sozigubezele nkosi yami soshwabana kungaziwa ukuthi kwenzakalani ngoba yosabi coronavirus. It's the truth that sickness will find us wherever we may be. But the important question is, have you got a proper relationship between you and God, and has everything been sorted out? So be of good cheer. No need to panic. No need to worry. He who stands for Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. So we need to all be of good cheer. And there's no reason to make ourselves worry. I'm not trying to make us panic here. I'm just trying to show you what is about to take place. We've been preaching these things, and these things are slowly happening. Number 3, what we should be doing, it's high time we wake up. To be honest with you, this church needs to really awake. If we need to start fixing the type of efforts we are doing as a church, and to really start spreading the message, because we were really called to ukushumayela evangeli, and it's really time for us to wake up, because our absence in our duty will then cause us not to see the kingdom, and that's quite factual. Ngoba mayebuya ukubuza ukuthi usebenze kanjani, angisho everyone will get a reward as per his work has been. So we really need to be preaching the message, young and old. There's no pension in this gospel. We really need to start preaching the message as much as we can. Number 4, it's time to really dust that Bible of yours and to start reading it. A lot of us are really appreciating the time of just sitting in a screen and watching people talk. Really, we need to start spending time reading our own Bibles and finding out what the truth for ourselves. And it's not the dark ages by any chance. It's high time everyone started reading the Bible for themselves. And guys, start focusing on the books that you don't like reading. I mean, books of Daniel and Revelation, let them speak. Let Daniel and Revelation speak. How else are you going to know what's happening during this time unless you start focusing on reading these books? Because God really spoke about what will transpire basically on these 2 books. Number 5 or 6. Okay. Establish a prayerful life. Yeah. We are not safe for an hour or a minute without prayer. And it's true. You don't know what you're going to meet. You don't know what's going to strike. I often say that we often take lightly of prayer. For instance, another day, I was made late by Umama Sekaya. I was kind of upset by the fact that I was made late, only to meet an accident that transpired almost 4 minutes earlier, which would have been Bezong Bamba had I not been delayed by Umama Sekaya. So you begin to realize that had I not prayed, had God not intervened, I would have died. So establishing a proper prayerful life really protects you for some of these things that you'll meet. And you would have been upset and angry. I was angry. Trust me, I was angry for the mere fact that I was made late, but only to realize that Nkulunkulu was protecting me from something that will struck my life and maybe destroy me. So it's quite important to establish a proper prayerful life. Find yourself a closet morning, afternoon, and evening, like Daniel did. And really pour out your life to Nkulunkulu. Talk to him. He's a father that cares. Tell him what troubles you. Tell him your struggles around your sin. Tell him your sorrows. Tell him why you cry now and again, and ask him for guidance, especially during times like these. The other thing we can do as a church is really start preparing for his coming. We as a Masinyan, I won't lie to you, Jesus is coming again. Everything around us seems to be telling us this. The nature understands it. Wherever you turn, everything seems to be telling us that Jesus is coming again. So we need to start preparing. And one of the ways of starting to prepare is our next point, get back to our calling. Yeah, Matthew 28, go out there, preach the message. Don't fight for a pulpit. Your pulpit, there are people you meet on a day-to-day basis. The simple things you can do. You can share a book. You can open a prayer line. You can start a prayer ministry. You can start a WhatsApp ministry. You can start a social media ministry. There's all these things in this, but every one of us needs to get back to our calling. Tonight, go on your knees, pray. What have you given me as a gift that I need to exercise so that umbuso wako uzufika? So guys, whether we like it or not, Jesus is coming back, and we are seeing these things taking place, and they're about to take place. Okay, education, page 179. She says, the present is a time of overwhelming interest to all living. Rulers and statesmen who occupy positions of trust and authority, thinking men and women of all classes have their attention fixed upon the events taking place about us. They are watching the strained, restless relations that exist among the nations. They observe the intensity that is taking possession of every earthly element, and they recognize that something great and decisive is about to take place, that the world is on the verge of a stupendous crisis. And truth be told, Bazalan, when you look at how things, the rumors of wars, we're no longer talking rumors of wars, we're hearing wars taking place here and there. We're seeing things happening around us. We're seeing diseases. We're seeing earthquakes. We're seeing tornadoes. We're seeing coronaviruses and all these things. Zonke lezi zinto are really telling us that something is about to happen. A storm is coming, relentless in its fury. Are we ready to meet it? And that's really the pivotal question that we need to ask ourselves. Romans 13 verses 1 to 11 to 14 says, do this now, knowing the time, that now it is high time to awake out of sleep. For now our salvation is nearer than we first believed. The night is far spent, the day is at hand. Therefore, let us cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light. In fact, I think the first two verses apply to most of us here. We can be honest that obviously there are things in our lives that we could fix. To have been fixated about life's pleasures and about building mansions and so on, but we've really not spent time fixing our characters, making them ready for heaven. And this is a reminder that if anything, this is one thing we need to do, to cast off the works of darkness and put on the armor of light. So Mike Kuba to let us walk properly as in the day, not in revelry and drunkenness, not in lewdness and lust, not in strife and envy, but put on the Lord Jesus Christ and make no provisions for flesh to fulfill its lust. So that's really God's call through the Apostle Paul, not in Rome, to really gear up and start getting ready for what is about to take place. My last slide really is about child guidance, page 55, paragraph 2. Uti transgression has almost reached its limit. Confusion fills the world, and a great terror is soon to come upon human beings. The end is very near. God's people should be preparing for what is to break upon the world as an overwhelming surprise. May the Lord bless the reading of his word. Amen. Okay, I think the remaining time we shall dedicate to any questions and comments people have, particularly about what we are talking about now. So if you have any questions, you can either post it or unmute yourself so that we can then discuss what we are talking. Okay, so one at a time, so we can also, yeah. Okay, questions?
Why unmode Amara?
Any questions? You guys happy? Sorted? No questions? Let me check. Okay, the one question I found, someone typed in a question here, is, hi sir, how does this connect with the New World Order? Okay, so New World Order really is having a uniform approach to taking decisions as a global unit. So where you find world leaders being able to put together an order, whether it be religion or how things are done in a global uniform way. Ingabe lento ikhuluma New World Order. To be honest with you, what you're seeing now is a world order. Yeah, because the order of things in terms of how the world was behaving has changed. Mine just so there's a new order to way things are taking place around us, which really tells us things have become different. But in relation to the New World Order on the 666 and what we're not talking about that now, but it could give rise, and it's also an exercise towards something that could take place similar to that. That's answering your question, Mfundo. I see another question by Uput Timothy. He's asking, don't you think this was a test to see whether they can control the world in a very short space of time? Let us wake up. I'd say it could be, to be honest with you. But more than world leaders, I think Usatane is obviously doing his part, playing his part to prepare for this thing to take place So he's also testing the ground in terms of making sure ukuthi abantu are ready to experience what he's about to unleash. So he himself is also preparing the multitudes of the world for what is about to take place. Omantwa asked the question, hi all, is this not the time to start moving? Is this not the time to start moving out of the cities to small towns or country? Two things around that question, really. Number one, angifuni sibe abantu ababalekela umsebenzi, to be honest with you. So if you've not done your part in preaching the message, what's the use of going to the country when you've not fulfilled your purpose? So this church, like I've expressed, has really failed in terms of really preparing a people for his coming. So we really need to go back there and to start preaching the message. Ultimately, into is to wake up and to really start preaching the message. And telling people about Jesus coming back again. So that's in response to you, Mantwa. Brenda says, is this not the way of them shifting to the world to one currency? That's a very interesting question, because not too long ago, I think it was yesterday, someone was they were discussing of moving the currency to a digital currency, because it will not then be affected by things like coronavirus or being closed. Out doing physical money, you would not need to go to the bank because you'll have digital money. So that's the discussion that's currently being discussed in Joba's Kuluma now. So there's a movement towards having a digital currency. So we might see some interesting things taking place. It may involve that. Obviously, that would protect it from things like the collapse we are seeing with JSE and other stock exchanges. But we'll obviously see how well that has been. But obviously, about Bitcoin and something have laid the foundation for something similar to that. So it's already there. So yeah, it's possible. Someone says, thank you very much for the session. It's very informative, and I believe that this 21 days is an opportunity to spend time with God. I couldn't agree with you more. So one of the things I woke up and really thought about doing is maybe we'll start setting up these sessions every evening. So around 7 o'clock, we'll touch base on different topics, really referring to prophecy and things that are leading up to his coming. So tomorrow we'll target the subject called Signs of the Times, so that's 7 p.m. Also on this platform. I love it because we can engage quite easily together. Mr. Hongo Brayam says, thank you so much for such informative presentation lesson, sir. Indeed, it is an eye-opener. We ought to be more awake and vigilant. I couldn't agree with you more. Lulama has posted a verse, Isaiah 26 verse 3, just in reference to what is going through on, I think Isaiah 26 verse 3 is almost something contextually talking to Lente COVID-19. It's a very interesting text. Isaiah 26 verse 3. I'll just read it for everyone. Thou will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed on thee, because he trusted in thee. Thank you, sir. Words of comfort, and really just to give meaning to what is going through for all of us now. Tsiriso asked the question, hi, does this have anything to do with the 5G technology? Obviously, there's been a lot of talk really around in the 5G. Just to put it into perspective, because I want to understand where this question is leading. There's currently a speculation with the, there was a specific design. So what we're seeing as COVID-19 is not necessarily a sickness as such, but it's brought through by the intervention technology 5G. So tinabanye sazi 4G, sazi 3G, and so on in our networks. But that very network 5G would contain some radiation impact in terms of our lives and bodies. To be honest with you, that has not been fully proven. Again, I fear that it would move us away from understanding this thing taking place as a pestilence rather than an invention of someone. And I fear it also has the potential of leading people to think that, moving people away from the emphasis here by billion into something else. So from what we can see right now, it pretty much is a biological thing. So it's a sickness in itself. It's a viral virus, so which needs to be dealt with. Someone says the services would be nice, especially in times like these. Thank you, Mfundo. I don't know if anyone wants to just unmute themselves and say something, or we have a question. If you have a comment or question, you are welcome to unmute.